because we had a lot of conversation on the compelling need for inducting sustainability in whatever we do. And the concept of blue economy, in fact, runs through the whole idea of sustainability. In fact, when we talk about in the context of the Pacific Island region, then when you translate sustainability, you bring sustainability to water, we have been calling it the blue economy. Though in my view, in fact, the original concept of blue economy was not limited purely to the waters. It was to the entire societal behavior. When Gunter Pauli talks about blue economy in his first publication, basically he is trying to take us back to how the nature works. And he makes a wonderful case that nature, which is the largest functional system, works without producing waste. It's a waste-free, largest operational system. So he's arguing if such a huge system can function and operate without waste, can we also work without waste? That's the whole idea which in fact provokes him to talk about blue economy. And he is referring to the entire action, not only limited to waters. But then as the discussion progressed, and then when we went to the Rio conference where the small island states argued for the first time a comprehensive idea of blue economy, we got to the oceans. So that is how, in fact, the blue economy came from land and everywhere universal and got limited to oceans. And also probably because when the discussion about the ocean health deteriorating and then talking about implications which were much more horizontal and global, because when we were talking about terrestrial pollution, it was seen in local context. A city far off in the world could be polluted and you were not bothered. Or a river far off was polluted and you were not bothered. But when we started talking about ocean health resulting in global warming, and then suddenly people realized that this was a horizontal thing. Something may happen far off in Pacific and you are affected in the Indian Ocean. In fact, I have lived half my life near oceans and I have seen how the oceans have really served or harmed the society, depending upon how we were dealing with them. In the Pacific, in the Atlantic, in the Caribbean, in the Adriatic Sea, in Indian Ocean, so on and so forth. I still remember when I was in Peru, long ago, I was a young boy, and I read a report in an Indian newspaper which said, this year it's going to be drought in India because there is something called El Nino in Peru. Now, Peruvian waters, 16 hours of flight distance. And El Nino takes place in Peru and India gets drought. Now, that really changed the whole perception how to deal with oceans. And it became a globalized compulsion at Rio. Thereafter, within no time, this whole agenda, this debate on blue economy became literally omnipresent. In the last 3-4 years, hardly a month would have gone when there was no conference, either regional or international, discussing blue economy. And I'm not surprised that we are discussing blue economy as an important element as part of this conference. You know, when you talk about sustainability, and then under that, the idea of blue economy. Now, I normally ask this question. We are explaining, underlining, stating our goals under blue economy. But then I ask this question, who will at the end of the day do it? Shall we do it? Would the scientists do it? Will the policymakers do it? Will the NGOs do it? Who at the end of the day will translate those ideas on the ground? And I think that is what brought us, and I will request the panel to concentrate on that aspect. That is what brought us to the answer that unless the mainstream business is on board with this idea, it won't go beyond the discussion rooms. And with that idea in mind, in fact, we set up a task force in Delhi and said, okay, let's talk to the business now. And we did extensive discussions with business, small scale, medium scale, large scale, and asked them, are you on board when we talk about blue economy? Do you understand in the first place? Initially, they thought, oh my God, another set of regulations. And they thought, oh God, now I'll have to do more in compliance and I'll become more expensive in compliance. It's a bad idea. But then, when they understood this, that it's nothing but a stitch of knowledge there, but it is driven entirely by business. It explains the blue economy, it goes through the regulation process, then it identifies the sectoral, it explains the sectoral performance, then it identifies the business and challenges, and then a roadmap how to go further. And the next stage, what we are going to do is that we are going to have a national conclave and an international meeting to bring all stakeholders together under one roof and then try to create what is called a comprehensive matrix of knowledge or capability on one hand and the needs of blue economy on the other hand. And then see, can we really bring these people together in finding a solution while let the economy grow, but without harming the ocean health. So that is what we had in mind. And I will request my expert panelists, because I don't think I'm an expert. I talk from common sense approach, but I'm sure my expert panel will then try to see whether I made sense or I was stupid, right? So with this in mind, I will first invite Aparna Pratap. She is working on this idea of sustainability and related issues for many years. And I'm sure she will speak more specifically with reference to the Pacific Islands. What are the challenges and what are the opportunities available to us? And what needs to be done so that the opportunity comes to our hand and the challenge takes the back seat. Aparna.
Thank you. Good afternoon and a warm welcome from the Pacific Islands Development Forum. I'm going to speak on the opportunities and challenges of blue economy in the Pacific. For the Pacific, the oceans are symbolic to the very existence of our Pacific way of life and culture. From being utilized as a traditional and nutritional source of food to being the cradle of life and long-term sustainability for our Pacific Islands. The blue economy opens to new opportunities for the Pacific. It can be transformational at local and national levels. While a lot of attention is given to the economic, social, and environmental sustainability aspects of the blue economy, addressing clean technologies, renewable energy, and circular economy are equally important. In addition, central aspects of the blue economy, such as innovation and job creation, may require further attention as well. The blue economy potential in small states face distinctive challenges, some of which are inherent in their small size and geographical locations. The economic cost of being small results in small domestic markets and limited export volumes. Small size also restricts the number of activities these states can engage in. They also have a high unit cost for the provision of public services, including policy formation and data collection, all of which are key for developing an ocean economy. In addition, their small populations limit the potential pool of qualified civil servants, which are typically stretched, handling large portfolios. The location of small states also presents a number of challenges. Many are isolated from major markets and trading hubs, increasing transportation, freight, and communication costs. They are highly vulnerable to climate change as well. It is a threat in the Pacific countries, with some countries only a few meters above sea level and facing natural hazards, including extreme weather patterns that can sometimes set back development by a generation. Small states also face a challenging development finance context. This challenges small, low economies of scale, climate change, remoteness, and limited funding and natural resources constrain the capacity of small states to realize sustainable development. Oceans and their vast economic resources present new avenues for realizing sustainable economic development in small states. Typically, in the Pacific Island countries, the extent of their maritime space, including their exclusive economic zones, constitute a larger geographic area than their land territories. The blue economy concept is centered on the sustainable utilization of ocean resources, and many Pacific Island countries are now starting to assess the potential economic value of their ocean. However, for this to be an effective development policy, it should factor in the unique structural challenges of small states. Partly the reason why the blue economy has garnered significant attention in recent years is its potential to overcome some of these structural challenges and realize sustainable development at multiple levels. The concept is still evolving, but the key sectors for small island states include fisheries, maritime transport, tourism, etc. We see recent developments in these sectors, challenges and their growth potential, and contribution to sustainable development in the future. In the Pacific regions, some have barely stepped into the ocean, while others have developed expertise in certain areas. To properly and sustainably manage the opportunities of the blue economy, we need to increase our knowledge of our maritime space. Thus, marine spatial planning of our ocean is a crucial starting point in terms of policies. This exercise is vital to ensure we avoid future conflicts and to ensure sustainable use of our maritime space and resources. With devoted leadership in this quest, the Pacific can offer the world the prospect of sustained, environmentally sound, and socially inclusive economic growth of the ocean. As we move forward, the implementation of the concept will reverse the current trends of continuous degradation of the marine ecosystem and its functionalities. There is a lot of work to be done. We have to establish complementary rules and regulations and change mindsets. They have to be replaced by concrete actions that will promote sustainable development of our ocean space and its potential. The change that can only be realized through strong leadership. Nowhere in this is this true for the ocean, a resource perceived to be everyone's right and no one's responsibility. Implementing all elements of a blue economy strategy is the key theme in developing blue economies. Much of the focus and emphasis must be placed on governance in order to successfully transition to a vibrant blue economy, because only a healthy marine ecosystem can offer ecosystem goods and services to the increasing population. As stewards of the world's largest ocean, Pacific Islands Development Forum leaders gathering in Honiara, Solomon Islands on 12th July 2016 approved for the PIDF to host the first high-level Blue Economic Conference in 2017. This conference will provide the Pacific region with a knowledge platform for discussions on the concepts, issues, and opportunities linked with blue economy. PIDF aims to provide a roadmap for the Pacific in developing blue economies for the Pacific. My recommendation from this session is for the governments of the Pacific Island countries and other stakeholders to support PIDF and work together to develop a roadmap for mainstreaming the blue economies in the Pacific. Vinaka, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Aparna. You really, you went in a wonderful storytelling mode and covered literally every aspect of blue economy, its challenges and the opportunities. In fact, if you ask me, as we go into future, any economy, not only blue, it could be terrestrial or blue. In fact, the gains which earlier were driven largely by capacity expansion, because it was capacity-driven gains. Enhance capacity, demand, and you will grow. So they were capacity-driven gains. But the future economies are going to be smarter economies, in fact, including the blue economy. So the gains will not only be capacity-driven. Capacity would only be one aspect and probably not the most important aspect. These gains will be the efficiency gains. These will be the sustainability gains. These will be the policy gains. These will be the skills gains. These will be the knowledge gains. So you will see it will apply entire knowledge available in the economic domain for making sure that the capacity gains importance, relative importance lowers down. Now, a simplest example which everybody gives, when I was a student, my computer used to weigh something about 50 kilos. And today, 10 times that capacity is in my pocket. So the capacity in terms of the inputs that we use will have to drastically drop by application of smarter technologies. And when I talk about smart technology, Dr. Shekhar's name comes to my mind. He is in fact a specialist in application of smart technologies, including the basics for smart cities. I think if you need one example in terms of sustainability, I think the concept of smart city would explain that all. In fact, today we have some tiny demonstration models. These are zero waste, small, tiny colonies. They host about 3,000 people, and there is zero waste. There is no water wastage, no solid waste, nothing, no emissions. These are as far as you call emission neutral. These are the smart towns. And if you're able to translate that to the whole horizontal scale, I'm sure we will be able to achieve what we are trying to achieve. Dr. Shekhar.
Thank you, Ambassador Mudugal, and thank you, panelists, for going to listen what I have to talk for 5 minutes. Now, nature has given two things, land and water, and left us to do whatever we can do. If you find everything else in the world is done by today what we consider as humans or what we consider as the other aspects of nature. So water becomes a very, very core important element because water and land, these are two things which are given. Rest all things are, if you see, is man-made. Whether it is energy, whether it is stable, whether it is chair, whether whatever you're sitting, whether what you're wearing, everything we have done. So water now becomes the core given by nature. How you manage, how you manipulate, how you maneuver is a way we can go forward. As he said, people many times say, hey, ocean is giving problem. Ocean is whatever it is doing. We have to see how we can, and we don't create problem to it. it will not create problem to us. So coming to the core aspect of blue economy, in whatever way I have tried to do in a book called Blue Economy, and whatever smart city is said, I will, within the next few minutes, I'll tell you how I'm going to combine the both. Initial few minutes I will take on India's growth, and then see how Pacific Islands can take advantage of it and learn from it and take it to its own natural conclusion. The moment we talk of India, we know it's second largest country, we have so much people, 1.4 billion people, and so on and so forth. From blue economy perspective, India has got 7,500 kilometers of coastline. 560 million people are around this coastline. It also has got 1,200 islands. Now, when we say 1,200 islands, there are countries even with 10,000 islands. India has got as much area on the land and so much area on the sea, almost 3 million square kilometers. So, whether these are all assets or liability, today when we have so much of asset, to guard itself is a big problem. India spends some Indian currency more than 50,000 crores in guarding its, in the area around the sea. So we evolved this concept of blue economy, how this could be an asset. How even India, what we are now doing, India, of course, as you know, is a 10,000-year-old civilization. But it had its own pitfalls for about 800 years. It became a liberal country about 65 years back. Then, why I'm telling this also is for a simple reason, that we became a liberal country with 350 million people. We have added 850 million people in the last 65 years. So whether these people are going to be an asset or liability is also going to get coupled with what I'm going to say. How to make this an asset is something which is very, very important, which will automatically come when I'm talking to a multi-country audience. So coming corely to the aspect of smart city, which he had said, one of the aspects which we had projected was, if we make smart cities, the life can be better, but without disturbing the natural environment, the natural circumstances, and the economic progress of the inhabitants. So the smart city concept, in India's point of view, was because in India, there is a huge rural migration. There will be almost 300 million people who would migrate from rural to urban areas. When such a migration takes place, the urban will get totally lynched. Because, typical people may know of cities like Delhi. Delhi has 20 million people, it may start having 40 million people. You'll just get lynched. So we are trying to see how in rural itself we will have cities, we will have people to have a sustained economy. Going directly to blue economy, now the proposal is this 1,200 islands which I am saying, out of which about 15 of them are as big as 100 square kilometers to almost 1,200 square kilometers. How these islands itself can be smart islands, where people can migrate to that area. Again, another aspect for the news of others, 800 of the islands are totally uninhabited, which means they are just barren lands. So when these islands are inhabited and people can go, people can sustain, the islands will grow, country will grow, so the blue economy will have its contribution. On blue economy contribution, since much has not been said, blue economy's contributions are what? Blue economy can give you huge marine resources. It has got a high use of tourism, fisheries, and also it has got mining. Very exhaustive thing can be mined from from the sea and in and around the sea. So once we have that type of an economy growing, we find that the growth of the nation will be far better, far bigger, and it will also be for the good of the people. Now coming to the actual implementation, one more word which I've used is the word secured governance. Now this word secured governance is used because when we talk of huge growth, there is a huge fund requirement. we have used the word here, sustained development. Even sustained development needs funds. In secured governance, the sustained development becomes self-sustained development. How does the self-sustained development comes? The self-sustained development comes because once you have some development, the values around the place goes up. Once you have a road coming in, values around the road goes up. But the road itself does not capture the value. Once you have any civic communities coming in, suppose you say Fiji in this area, and Fiji you go 20 kilometers away, the values around that will not be high, because here roads are there, amenities are there. In secured governance, we capture this value so that the main infrastructure itself comes almost free. Which means the road comes free because road itself gives 100 times value around the road. So that means, which means 1% of it will the cost of the road. Same way, if we duplicate it on the islands which we are talking, the island development becomes self-sustained. So from a sustained to self-sustained is what is secured governance. I will not go into a very high depth because it's a very involved topic. You all should know that there is a chance available in which the development can be self-sustained, is what I'm trying to say in a few minutes. So once we take this from the Indian point of view, many places, whatever I'm saying is being implemented. In New Bombay itself, we have a place called Dronagiri, where a marine port is coming, with all aspects coming into the port, which means that itself will be a throbbing city, smart city. Same thing we are trying to see, it can be duplicated in many of the islands. Many of the islands, as you know, are spread over a huge area with all its variants which are necessary for the island survival. So same aspect can easily now come to Pacific Islands. Now let me now dwell from, since the time is short, I'm going too fast. So in Pacific Islands, what India can bring its huge experience, which it has got. India can bring a very different type of resources. As you know, very recently, our Prime Minister has announced satellite communication to all the countries around India. Maybe all those things can be extended to the regions in Pacific Islands. You would have all disaster management. Morning we discussed about healthcare. We are discussing so many things. Because India is one of the topmost leader in satellite communication. Satellites are made in India. And these can easily be deployed. And even United Nations and others are ready to fund such projects. And so your life and your development will be far better and far much better than what it will be when you sort of exploit the islands without the negative meaning of the word exploit to the benefit of the people of Pacific and so the people of India. Thank you.
Dr. Shekhar, I think nobody could have done a better job than what you have done in terms of explaining the games of smartness. I'll give you one example. In fact, once we just traveled to a village near Munich.
Yeah.
And it was getting dark. And the street lights were not on. Then he asked somebody, I said, why the street lights are not on? It's dark. He said, but there is nobody else. You are the only one. I said, but I also need light. He said, take out your cell phone, call this number, the lights will go on. And you walk for 10 minutes. If you don't really redial it, it will go off. Now, can you imagine, for example, we keep the street lights on for 8 hours only because there could be one person walking through that street. Now, just imagine if we could be smart. I have a cell phone in my pocket. If I have to go out, let the light be on for me and not for 8 hours. So I think smartness gains can bring sustainability. And these are simple things. These are possible, right? And now I think we'll go further to, now I'm asking Mark Mock to share his ideas, again with regard to the opportunities and challenges, and also where we could be smart when it comes to the small island states.
Thank you very much. Bulavinaka, everyone. I'm Mark Borch from the Pacific Islands Development Forum. I'm going to use a presentation because I take my cue from presentations. And I believe that pictures can say 1,000 words. This is the Pacific. This is where we are. And from this side, the world looks like an ocean world. There's hardly any land that you can see. Next slide. And in fact, our member countries make up 99.5% of ocean. Only 0.5% of it is land. So obviously, our interest in the ocean is natural because most of our territories are made up of ocean. 99.5% of it is ocean. Next slide. And this is in all countries across. The blue band is the ocean for each of our member countries. The orange band, where you can see it, is the land. Next slide. So what is blue economy for us? Well, it's important because it basically surrounds us everywhere, this ocean. But for us, blue economy is not simply an economic activity that takes place in the ocean. There's more to it. For us, blue economy must respect the same principles of the green economy. And in that sense, it should be sustainable, it should deliver equity, it creates genuine prosperity and well-being for all, it should improve the natural world, it should be inclusive and participatory in decision-making, it has to be accountable, it should build economic, social, and environmental resilience. It should deliver sustainable production and judicious use of resources. And importantly, it should invest in the future. Only then should we consider that activity as a blue economy activity. If it doesn't meet those criteria, it's just exploitation of our oceans. You can call it whatever you want, but in our ideas, you shouldn't be calling it blue economy. You just call it an economy activity that's happening in the ocean. Next slide. So what's in the Pacific? The Pacific already has a lot of blue economy happening. You know, some of it may be not as blue as we would like it. Like, for example, in our fisheries. You know, if we manage our fisheries well, then yes, it would fall into our blue economy equation. But unfortunately, go back, please. Yeah, I'll tell you when to go forward, Rich. But unfortunately, even the fisheries sector, when we think of fisheries, the only thing we think about in the Pacific is the tuna. However, there's more fisheries than just tuna. No, the women that fish every day in our oceans for their use for sustainable livelihoods in their villages, they're part of the blue economy. But there's very little consideration of the contribution that these women give to our communities and to our economy. You know, the proteins they provide to our people. Okay? So we need to bring the gender into the blue economy model as well. Next slide. Tourism. Tourism has sustained so much of our economy, and tourism can very easily be part of the solution, as well as can be part of the problem sometimes, if not done well. And the tourism is one area where we can see growth, and we can see growth within a sustainable blue economy model. Okay? We get around 1.5 million tourists a year in all around the Pacific, excluding Australia and New Zealand, of course. 1.5 million tourists. That can easily double in a few years. Okay? But how are we going to ensure that is done well, that our biodiversity, great biodiversity that we have in the Pacific, is preserved? Next slide. Transport. Again, big advancements are being made in maritime transport. Our traditional transport systems we're trying to revive. You know, these are the boats that took our people from one island to the other and inhabited all the Pacific. And we've lost a lot of the culture that comes with these boats. We're trying to bring them back. Obviously, maritime transport is important. It's a lifeline for us. But again, there are advances being made even in this particular area with the reintroduction of some technology that's actually not new, like the rotors there that we see there, flattener rotors, which save a lot of fuel and make transport systems more environmental. Next slide. This is an area that's coming, and renewable energy from our oceans, whether it is from our waves or currents, or you can see there solar panels floating on the ocean. Okay, why not transfer some of the use that we have from our land? We have very precious land. We can't use all our land for many different things. If we can transfer some of that use from our land to our ocean, obviously that liberates our land for other uses, or just to preserve it as such. Solar panels can be floating on the ocean. Why not? Next slide. And an important area that's now coming into play is the blue carbon issue. The carbon that is trapped by our mangroves, which we mistreat and which we undervalue in our countries, which we cut and replace with concrete. Those mangroves are doing a great service to the world, as is the seagrass, and these are homes for a lot of people. There's a small picture there of kids who live in the mangroves areas. We need to preserve that as well. Next slide. And finally, the subject that very few people want to talk about, but I think we must, is the issue of deep seabed mining. Okay? And here again, I say, can we do seabed mining respecting those principles that we mentioned before? If you can convince me, that the seabed mining won't harm the environment, won't have any effect for future generations, it won't have any effect on our other industries, fisheries and tourism, then, well, go ahead, well and good. But if you can't give us those guarantees, then I'd say, wait, no. And unfortunately, those same principles have to be applied to mining on land as well, okay? Because we have the same problems on land. And I think the difference with seabed mining is that we can't see what's happening down there. We don't know how to go about and doing an environment impact assessment on a project that's being proposed for under the sea. So these are issues that before we can come to grips of how to do these things, I don't think we should proceed without at least some precautions in place. Next slide. Now, some recommendations. The blue economy roadmaps are needed both nationally and regionally, and these allow all stakeholders to plan ahead in this area. It should involve all relevant sectors and include the private sector and civil society groups as well. They should be living roadmaps with regular updates, taking advantage of most recent research and technology. Should have national steering committees and regional steering committee to take these forward, and have a blue economy hub, which I propose to be at PIDF, to share relevant information with all stakeholders and enable cross-pollination of ideas. Next slide. And lastly, another recommendation might be to have a blue economy think tank in the Pacific, again with a whole lot of stakeholders involved, and including economists, planners, tourism operators, energy experts, fisheries economists, whoever is a stakeholder in this area should be part of this blue economy think tank. I think this is the last slide. Yeah, Naka. I'll stop there. Thank you.
I totally agree with this assessment that before, look before you leap. That old saying, don't jump without you are sure of the surface you're going to jump on. And I think when it comes to blue economy, you have to be very careful because it needs a multi-sectoral assessment. whether you have hard ground to jump on or it's a slippery ground. Because it's a complex thing, because somebody said, why we mess up the oceans? Because we don't live there. B, we can't see through them. We don't even know what's happening underneath. But we presume that, it should be all right. And as a result, we'll end up making those mistakes. So I think technology will definitely help us there also. Because there was a time when our access to ocean was limited. We were neither able to go deep nor far. But today, we are able to go far and deep. As a result, I think we can do better judgment before we do anything. And I think to carry this whole idea further, I'll request Dr. Stefan to share his thoughts. He's, in fact, I would say, a very deep into the ocean kind of expert. And I'm sure he will share his thoughts, which will make our decision-making easier.
Ula Vinaka, thank you, Ambassador Mukdal. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me today to share with you some of the experiences that countries here in the Pacific Island region made over the last years in exactly these points, trying to assess values of the ocean in regard to blue economies and trying to assess the interest of different users and to accommodate those interests in a balanced way. My name is Jan Steffen. I'm representing and coordinating a regional project that works with 5 Pacific Island countries, jointly implemented by our colleagues from the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program, SPREP, IUCN, and the German government's Agency for International Development. And together with the governments of the 5 countries we are working with, we came across a number of very interesting issues. The governments of the Pacific Island countries in 2010, 2011, in the spirit of the Convention of Biodiversity's 10-year strategic plan for biodiversity, were concerned about the basis of the blue economy, the resources of the region, the blue resources. And the governments were very concerned because we have all learned that they are not endless, as we thought maybe 50 or 100 years ago, that they are limited, that they can be overexploited, and that they need to be managed very wisely, and that conflicts already arise in regard to the use of these resources. So our job very much is to assist governments not so much in ridge to reef planning, because we think that that planning should not stop at the reef, but it's truly in the Pacific, in the sense of Mark's slides, truly ocean-to-ocean planning. So we are working with the partner countries virtually from the EEZ boundary in the west to the EEZ boundary in the east, and all the marine values in between. And that is very much not only in the spirit of the Biodiversity Convention, but also, as we all know, particularly this year, in regard to the Sustainable Development Goals. Some of us are going to meet again in New York in 2 weeks' time at the first United Nations Ocean Conference. And one of the things that will concern us there is in how far countries are able to assess the marine values effectively. When our project started, we consulted the Pacific Island countries and said, what are the key priorities at your hearts when it comes to marine resources? And it was very interesting that the Departments of Fisheries and Environment often said, we actually face challenges communicating in cabinet. We know it's not just tuna, it was mentioned before. We know that there are so many invisible values, and we would like to share them more effectively. So that became the first key component of that project. We try for the last 4 years to work with the governments of these 5 countries to holistically assess not only the ecosystem goods that we are familiar with, either the marketed fish or the subsistence fish, but also the services that the ocean provides. And that often can be regulating services, various forms, and almost always overlooked. When it comes to the value of these resources, it was very interesting when the first results came in. We didn't even publish the first consultants' report. the policymakers came and said, can we use this for Vanuatu's new green growth framework? Fiji, our green growth framework is in preparation. Can we rely on these values? The Solomon Islands are working on an ocean policy. Vanuatu just launched an ocean policy. And I think that is a strong message from the Pacific Island countries that blue economies are likely to fail without effective ocean governance. A very important area. Just in the last couple of weeks, 4 or 5 of the countries here in the region have nearly finalized their national ocean policies or ocean policy frameworks, and they're making tremendously large steps ahead. But they are also concerned that it's not only the values, it is the spatial planning that was mentioned earlier. How can the resource use, the resource potential be transparently governed by government if the data related to these different forms of use are highly fragmented, not only within government or within the countries, but even globally. So we have worked for the last 4 years with 5 countries to assess the availability of data in regard to blue economies and ocean resources. And another surprising finding was that many colleagues in the country says, well, our data are quite limited. Almost every single stakeholder we worked with was surprised in the process how much information there is. It's just very highly scattered and fragmented. In most of the countries by now, departments of lands, fisheries, environment have access to more than 130, 150 different data sets on various ocean parameters and resources that always existed for the last 10, 15 years. They were just not in one space at the fingertips of the colleagues in government. And that brings us to the last point, planning. Government colleagues in all the countries said, well, we have had pilot projects, we have examples for effective management, but that does not work. These pilot projects are not yet covering countries. Every single one of the countries we're working with has inspiring examples of either traditional or innovative resource management, but it is actually very difficult, not only in this region, but globally, to document these experiences and effectively share more widely, a true and tremendous challenge. When we come to the ecosystem services and goods that were already mentioned, Mark mentioned carbon sequestration, tourism came as an issue, deep sea minerals, I mentioned commercial fishery and subsistence fishery, but another point is a point that you mentioned, the whole area of research, education, bioprospection, future technology, renewable energy from the ocean. We are just beginning to tap at the values that even after 4 years, countries are just beginning to unwrap. And already those values are fascinating. When we asked colleagues in some of the countries, how do you think does the subsistence fishery in your country relate to the tuna license fees, for example? In almost every single country, the colleagues in fisheries underestimated the value. In almost every country, they said maybe 10 or 20%. Bring us back to Mark's photograph. In most of the countries, the subsistence and artisanal small-scale fishery is often 2, 3, 4 times the value of the commercial fishing that we are normally aware of when we are talking about tuna. And that was a tremendous moment in many of the countries. Several of our countries have changed their inshore policy for that reason, have changed their fisheries departments for that reason, and are actually now looking at forming, similar to India, national ocean governance committees or councils to be able to debate and discuss and sometimes dispute these values more holistically and more intersectorally. A figure from Fiji as an example, Fiji contributes about $1 billion Fiji worth of carbon storage to the world every year. Nobody in Fiji knew that 2 years ago. Fiji's marine tourism was always an important factor, but that it was amounting to 1.15 billion a year was not known in that regard. That Fiji's marine ecosystem services equal and possibly exceed the entire annual export figures, nobody expected. So I think it was these surprises, but the challenge now comes, how can government share, socialize, disseminate these values? How can cabinets make use of this? How do these values come about? We just had a very interesting discussion with Foreign Affairs here in Fiji 2 days ago. They wanted to share these data in New York, and they were going back to tourism and saying, where do these marine tourism figures coming from? And tourism said, we are not collecting them. they had to be calculated specifically for this study because it's not a standard figure that we are collecting. So one more major outcome of this effort was that not only the values that were found were important for the countries, but also the gaps that required to be addressed. Most of our countries came out with a tremendous to-do list of values that need more regularly and more effectively and not necessarily more expensively assessed. So we're working with our partners on resource efficient, cheap, and sometimes even open source license-free solutions. The countries are looking at various scales of marine spatial planning. There was a lot of misunderstanding 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. It can happen, of course, on the community scale, as here in Fiji, in the Goli areas. It should happen on the country level, but we are also, of course, working with partners on the regional scale here in the region. And I'm sparing you that slide because it is a headache slide, but once governments started to overlay all these different current resource uses without even including future resource use, you can see the map beside me, nobody expected that the map of the EZ of Fiji or Tonga or Vanuatu or the Solomons already look so crowded. And I guess that's another big take-home message. The blue economy is a very large promise to the future and to future generations, but only effective governance and the means to really bring all sectors effectively to the table to weigh costs and benefits will allow Pacific Island countries and in fact all countries to succeed when it comes to blue economies. I made a note here earlier, inspired by an earlier speaker. I think one of the points we heard from most of our country government colleagues was that they were easily seduced, and so am I sometimes, and Mark mentioned that, by short-term convincing benefits. Yeah. That convinces all of us. These can be very big figures. But as part of our 4-year process, many of the colleagues came back and said, as a matter of fact, maximizing medium and long-term benefits by not sacrificing assets for short-term benefit should be our target. And this comes back to all the different resource use schemes that we saw. And the last point I would like to make is one that was a bitter experience for Fiji. We were looking ahead. We were looking at the blue economy, the potential, when Cyclone Winston struck Fiji. And that was a moment when not only future potential became important, but then all these resource maps and patterns and uses were very, very important for the government to assess damage and to assess the way forward. The post-disaster needs assessment required all the data that we collected to assist in the context of a blue economy. So another sign of the side of the same metal. The same was the case in Vanuatu after Cyclone Pam. So I believe that there's a lot of work to be done. But as my other speakers, co-speakers, have said probably much more eloquently than me, the promise is overwhelming, but the way is not necessarily easy. Vinaka Vakalevu.
As I thought, I think this has been really very, very useful conversation, useful presentation. My exposure to the complexity of oceans came when I was in Latin America. I won't name the country. There was a Pacific island closer to the coast, and because of that Pacific island, there was a thriving fishing town. There was fishing on the island. A lot of birds will come. There was bird watching. There was tourism and all that stuff. And one fine morning, suddenly, the fish disappears, the birds disappear, and the whole thing disappears. Some smart guy thought, there is so much of fish, why can't I take more out? And then they started taking out smaller fish without realizing that if the smaller fish was not there, the birds will not come. If the birds do not come, the bird droppings will not be there. If the droppings are not there, the planktons will not grow. If the planktons do not grow, the fish will not be there. Can you imagine such a small, silly thing that I can take out a bit more, 10 kg more, why not? And that 10 kg more disrupted the whole system. Because once the birds found some other place to go, they don't come back so easily. They found an alternate place to go. And the whole thriving fishing town completely disappeared. So I think, my knowledgeable partners are making those useful inputs, which are also reminding me of some practical issues one has watched. And my next speaker, who will, I'm sure, add to our knowledge about this, is Dr. Priyadarshi Das. He works for a non-governmental research organization in Delhi and has been working on ocean economy and blue economy for many years. Priyadarshi.
Thank you, Chair. I think my previous speakers have made my job easy, convincing everybody that what is the universe of this concept. The organization that I belong to is Research and Information System for Developing Countries. We started working on blue economy 2 years back without having any background as such on that. And when we started working, we got to know that how big is this area and how multidimensional is this area. And we have brought a report, a couple of policy briefs. Now we have a dedicated web link. We call it Blue Economy Forum. We started with Indian Ocean Rim Association, 21 member states, but gradually we are moving to other regions and bringing entire gamut of issues that one deals with in the area of blue economy. We have a fully functional team working on that. So what I do here, as Chair mentioned in the beginning, the principles of blue economy has two core dimensions. One is that to derive the maximum economic benefits of ocean resources in a sustainable way without undermining the recycling, regeneration aspects of the resources. Because if you go on utilizing those resources indiscriminately, what would happen? You may grow in terms of the economic parameters, but the resource stock, the biological resource stock will go down. So the future generations' growth possibility will go down. So this is the basic foundation on which we have started popularizing this concept. Before that, green economy was there, but then what happened? Have you achieved sustainable development? So if you keep on doing blue economy that way, maybe we'll be doing a lot of work without making any sense. So deriving the point from the clue from speaker's introduction, how to do or how to promote blue economy. What should be the approach to deal with that? The first bunch of literature that appeared on blue economy tried to define the concept, trying to define the coverage of the scope of, go to the next slide please, the scope of the blue economy, and then some rough idea about how much it contributes to the national GDP. Some numbers are there. So when we thought of how to do it, all the stakeholders' role equally comes into the picture, be it the government, be it the private sector, be it the non-governmental organizations, even to the citizens. Because what happens, the citizens has to inculcate a culture of consumption that has some bearing on the sustainability aspects. If you demand more goods that are resource intensive, then the producers will keep bring those goods into the market. So consumption leads to production. The more consumption of resource intensive goods, the more production of resource intensive goods as well. Because the profit making sector works for profits. So economics has to align with other social sciences, as Chair has mentioned from the beginning. So what is the contribution of blue economy sectors? The contribution of blue economy sector is enormous. And it is prominent for small island developed states like the Pacific Island states. The literature also identifies that there are some traditional blue economy sectors like fishery, port and shipping, tourism and others. But equally, we have done in our report also, there could be some emerging blue sectors as well. Those emerging blue sectors are not necessarily new sectors, but some activities emerging within the existing blue sectors, which could be called as emerging blue subsectors. That will be more appropriate. Unlike traditional sectors, emerging blue activities not only need political will, but continuous public support to encourage R&D, innovation, demonstration, and deployment of technologies, financing those technologies. So this is the way you start thinking that, okay, blue economy is this. It has this much contribution to the livelihood of the people. Now how to do it? I am taking a very bold approach. This is the first time I'm saying here in this conference. Instead of taking everything together approach, why not take a focused sector approach, a target sector approach? What will be the benefit of that will come in a minute. Instead of taking everything together approach, I mean all sectors at a time, coastal nations must focus a few identified strategic sectors for promoting blue economy. Next slide, please. So this is the scope of blue economy. It ranges from across various economic sectors, and there are some indicative activities in those sectors. Go to the next. Next slide, please. Now here comes the point which I made, mainstreaming blue economy in national economic policy. Civilizations have depended on oceans for survival. Forget about the production of luxuries or whatever. So what was new in the blue economy then? We have depended on oceans. Oceans have given us so much of services, recreation, food, everything oceans have given us for centuries. So what extra will you do by bringing this concept of blue economy? What you are doing here, you are not only emphasizing the crucial role oceans play in everybody's life, at least for the coastal nations, but reminding you that since you depend on oceans, why don't you take care of the ocean wealth? Why are you using it in a way, in an extractive fashion, to show that your GDP numbers are high? So this is where the crux lies, that blue economy was there, but not the way it is presented today. So a lot of academic sensitization has already happened. Now it is the real practice of by the businesses, by the people to carry this forward. So here, if you see some challenges, opportunities, Mark and others have already presented. Capture fishery, a lot of overfishing has happened. 80 to 90% of our precious fish species are now about to extinct. That's why I'm saying too much blue economy has already happened. Fishing is happening, there is no reporting of that activity. So data remains underestimated at the public level, even by the researchers. And aquaculture, it is contributing, supplementing the demand for fish, but leads to environmental pollution because of fish meal and fish meal use others. Tourism, the coastal areas gets affected because of waste, plastics, because of sea beach pollution, construction around the deep sea mining. People say, literature say, there are a lot of rare earth metals, polymetallic nodules are there, hydrocarbon sources are there, but then it is very risky in terms of the size of investment required, because private sector is not forthcoming. Whatever exploration technology we have, those are not properly commercialized, and it commercialized in the sense keeping in mind the environmental parameters. The Pacific Island countries have already leased out some areas for deep sea fishing that is there. Marine biotechnology, drugs, nutraceuticals, cosmetics, food additives, all these can be also promoted, but then low R&D in those sectors, even in Europe. The companies, those who do R&D in Europe are small and SME sector industries. Low investment, long period of the compound development, takes 30 years. After that also, now proper commercialization. Renewable ocean energy, some technology is there, some of them are small scale, some of them are big scale, but again, no priority to understand the technology, it's a commercialization, deployment and everything. Next. Now coming to the point I'm making here, why do you need to adopt a target sector approach? You can always say each country takes a target sector approach. If fishery is important for Fiji, why Fiji will think about deep sea mining? But the problem is that it's not about thinking. We produce policies, programs one after other, talking about blue economy as a whole and waste our time. Whatever important for your economy, begin with that. Bring some best practices. Try to replicate those in other countries. So this is a bold proposal coming from our side. Each coastal nation specializes in select ocean resources. So why don't you focus on your sector, your country, and then start investing it? Whatever expertise you have, use that. You have small resources, use those small resources for some big gains in the future. Given budget constraint, specific sectors with specified budgets for a predefined time period may prove more effective than everything together approach. No country has can afford to have allocated more resources exclusively for promoting blue economy. So if you begin with that, because there are large countries, even India also, we are not skeptical, but we are not crazy also, going the way the literature says. Coastal economies with relatively large land-based resource endowment are unlikely to allocate more resources to blue economy sectors immediately. India has a large land-based resource because of the large size. There could be many more countries. This may not be the logic appropriate for India, but I am taking, because we are academic organization, we are bringing perspectives which can be tested later. So, tangible achievements in one or few sectors would lead to greater acceptability of the principle of blue economy. Right now, it is operating at a surface level. It has to deepen. The policymakers needs to be sensitized. We academicians should write sensibly, go to the micro sectors and examine. So that concludes the last point. Policy effectiveness, replication, predictability can be better achieved through target sector mode. Now, this is the last slide, which if you talk about, please go to the next one. The next one. Yes. Now, if you want to bring it to in the context of India-Pacific Island countries cooperation, again here some recommendations. Proper resource mapping in the mutually beneficial sectors, investment opportunities need to be identified and sensitized among the stakeholders, specific academic and industry resources to be mobilized by both the parties. Private firms and industry associations may experiment cooperation in select products and services and bring the cost, benefit, everything. The nature of cooperation may be in the form of sharing of technology, capacity building, stake in ownership, mutual exchange of students, skilled workers, and so on. So all this depends on, again, Stephen's presentation that the governance, ocean governance, and the institutions involved in those ocean governance. Thank you so much.
Our colleague Stephen has to leave for another meeting. I think we should let him go and give him a big hand for his wonderful presentation. I think you made a good point, but it depends on how others will react to this. Concentrate on your strength rather than doing everything. Do what you do best. To begin with, yes. After this, let me call upon now Mr. Crowley for his presentation.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. You can see that we passed 5 o'clock, so I'll be very brief. My interest in this blue economy was very much in the role of good information and data in order to formulate and inform good policies. It's a big risk when we don't know what's out there. Blue economy. If you go in the ocean, I think the first 2 Ks you know something about it. The rest down there is unknown. Unknown. So until that data or good information is there for you to plan, then all the effort is a waste. And I think this is the role of This is where the issue of policy comes in. Need for good policies, because there it identifies the challenges and what are the opportunities, what are the threats. We know very well in the Pacific are very vulnerable to climate change. And this big ocean is the energy for climate. It provides the energy for climate. It stirs the whole climate of the globe. And if that climate changes, what will happen to our blue economy? The fish is moving. The forecast for the event of El Nino, for example. El Nino is the movement of temperatures across the Pacific, across right down to Lima, Peru. And climate change will have big impact. That thermal pool of water is an indicator of the fisheries, resources. So it's quite important. I think that's why we have to invest on good information, do a bit of research, and formulate good policies. Otherwise, we'll be lost somewhere. So the economy is going to turn blue, or we turn blue. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge. What's best for us, our economies are quite vulnerable to shocks, even small cyclones. And if we lost the blue economy because of our negligence, with no information to support our actions, then we left in the worst conditions. So I think this is the challenge for Pacific Islands. I had a look at one of the reports by the South Pacific Commission, who are doing maritime boundary delineation for Pacific Island countries. And it's interesting that only 3 or 4 countries have been able to done that, who have looked at their territorial waters, who have looked at their exclusive economic zones, the continental shelf, the open seas. But you need that information so you can monitor things like illegal, unregistered fishing. These are all good data that we need to look at how we can combine and develop good indicators that will inform good outcomes. I wish you all the best. Good luck. Thank you.
Our last intervention is by Mr. Ralifo. He is from the WWF. They have done tremendous effort in terms of generating information, making assessments, and also doing some accounting for the blue economy. And for one of your assessments, I was really thrilled to read when it says, the asset value of blue economy is somewhere $24 trillion. And the annual value addition exceeds $2.5 trillion. That's an underestimation in my view, but still it's a huge thing. And I'm sure some kind of stakeholders must be excited about that number and trying to overdo their blue economy effort. So we'll listen to you, and then we'll open the floor for question answers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I think being the last speaker and listening to all the presentations that already had been done before me, I think it's like as if I'm going to be summarizing everybody else's presentation. WWF, in 2015, we decided we drafted a report. We actually launched a report on the principles of a sustainable blue economy. And this report was drafted based on a combination of experiences and lessons that we have as an organization and a network have collated over the years, working in more than 100 countries. This report was actually developed to fill the gap with regards to the fact that there is no internationally recognized or agreed definition on what sustainable blue economy means. And so to fill this gap and to help ensure that the economic development of the ocean contributes to true prosperity and human well-being, today and long into the future, WWF has developed this set of principles of a sustainable blue economy, and the principles offers a clear definition of the sustainable blue economy, a guidance on the sustainable blue economic governance, and also a roadmap to develop a sustainable blue economy. And the principles are actually quite universal, and it can be applied to both ocean and maritime activities, as well as also land-based activities. And it is in line and in synergy with all the internationally recognized conventions that are related to the sustainable use and conservation of ocean resources. In terms of and also at the same time, these principles can also be used by any of the stakeholders, whether it's going to be government or industries, private sector, CSOs, or even communities at the grassroots level. In terms of the definition, a sustainable blue economy is a marine-based economy that provides equitable social and economic benefits for current and future generations, leaving no one behind. It also restores, protects, and maintains the diversity, productivity, resilience, core functions, and intrinsic value of the marine ecosystems, and is based on clean technology, renewable energy, and circular material or economic flows. With regards to governance, WWF recommendation is that a sustainable blue economy is governed by public and private processes that are inclusive, which means that all stakeholders should participate in the decision-making processes and at the same time be given equal opportunities to be part of the monitoring, evaluation, and also implementation. It should not be just for the sake of, it should not be just government responsibility to implement, but it's also every stakeholder's responsibility. It should be well informed and must have precautionary and adaptive approaches, and it should be based on the sound scientific data and information. In the absence of such data and information, the precautionary principles should be applied. We must not forget the value of traditional knowledge and information that can also be contribute towards decision-making processes. And it must also be accountable and transparent. In terms of a roadmap for sustainable blue economy, first and foremost, a sustainable blue economy should have a set of clear, measurable, and internally consistent goals and targets. And these goals and targets must be SMART. They must assess and communicate the performance on these goals and targets through regular monitoring and evaluation processes that is transparent and is accessible to everyone and allows everyone to participate. The roadmap must create a level economic and legislative playing field that provides a sustainable blue economy with adequate incentives and rules. It must also plan, manage, and effectively govern the use of marine spaces and resources, applying inclusive methods and ecosystem approaches, which means that all relevant uses of the marine space and resources must be accounted, planned, managed, and governed through forward-looking, precautionary, adaptive, and integrated processes. All actors must develop and apply standards, guidelines, and best practices that support a sustainable blue economy. And at the same time, it must recognize that the maritime and land-based economies are interlinked and that many of the threats facing the marine environment are actually based on land. And therefore, we must also continue to use the holistic ecosystem-based management approach. And last but not least, must actively cooperate, share information, knowledge, and best practices, lessons learned, and perspectives and ideas to realize a sustainable and prosperous future for all. And in conclusion, I cannot stress the importance that we cannot continue to do business as usual. We must change the way we do business and strive for a sustainable blue economy. And we cannot continue to work in isolations, but we need an integrated and a synergetic approach towards sustainable ocean management. Thank you.
Let me now open the floor for question-answer session. Let's devote some time in really discussing it with the floor. So anyone who wants to ask any one of us will be very glad. I think we'll have about 10 minutes or 15 minutes of discussion with the floor. Yes, please.
I'd like to thank everyone for their contributions. This was an enlightening and informative session. I thought it was interesting. You mentioned the business as usual, what we can't be doing. We've talked about blue economy in this session as parallel to green economy. We know what a green revolution looked like. We've talked about that. And Dr. Dash, you mentioned a couple of components of what a blue revolution could look like. But under the current business as usual framework, as you mentioned at the beginning, Ambassador, a stitch in time. And I think we're already into a remedial phase. We need to look at what has been happening in terms of effective ocean governance and make those changes. I thought I'd point out, I don't know how many people have read the Fiji Green Growth Framework, but they mentioned at one point the scale of the fishing fleet at its maximum was 115 ships with a 15,000 ton capacity. So based off of SPC's data on how much fish, seafood protein a person eats in a year in the Pacific, it's around 50 kgs, which means that one full turn of the fishing fleet, this isn't even counting illegal, unregistered fishing, one full turn of the fleet would take out enough fish to feed every man, woman, and child in Fiji for over 40 years. And that's legal. That was at all above board, regulated, that was what was allowed. So that means that the Asian market taking that fish was eating everyone in the Pacific's grandchildren's dinner. So I just thought that was worth pointing out, like, where do we go from there? That's what we've said is acceptable from an economic standpoint here, looking at fishery returns. And I just thought I'd mention as well, we were talking about the tourism sector, and from a sustainability standpoint, this past year, they had the Fiji Excellence in Tourism Awards. Castaway and Mololo Islands, they put up for sustainability awards. They are running desalination plants off of diesel generators. And it's all imported, brought in through Fiji, through Vunda Point, and then out to the Mamanuthas. And that, in their mind, the conservation efforts they had in place qualified as sustainable. So the whole concept from the private sector is off. It's not there. And wait, can I ask, hands up if you're from the private sector? So we're talking about not pillaging, and we forgot to invite the pirates. So this is one of those things. We're talking about data collection. Jan mentioned it, how the tourism sector didn't deliver data sets. Mr. Crawley, you said without the data, the risks are greater. So one of the things we've talked about in other meetings is when you have to register for a business license, where are the mandated data sets that you have to turn in to get that business license renewed? It means that you reduce your burden on your public sector. Your government doesn't have to do this collection if the private sector is mandated to deliver the data you need. So that's one of those things. We're talking about these issues and what we can do to change that. And I think from Dr. Julie Field is presenting at the Fiji Museum in an hour on the Lapidi people who came to Fiji before anyone else. And she's talking about the artifacts that they found in the Sigatoka Valley of how much bigger the fish were before humans arrived here. We're working with a shifting baseline. We talk about what people remember when they were kids. That's not even accurate as to what happened before human incursions. So if anyone's interested to learn a little bit more and can't stick around, they should check in on what her research has been covering for the last 5 years or so. Things are shifting, and I don't think the full scale is properly addressed at this point, is how far it shifted and how much we need to do. But yeah, I'd like to hear more from everyone about what they can conceive of as a blue revolution. How do we do this when we're already this far depleted? Thank you.
Can we take more questions and then try to comment on them together, just to save time? Yes, please.
Thank you. Again, maybe this is a question or a comment. My opinion, I would say that in regards to the blue economy issue, it's a standstill. Nothing has been done. we're still talking about definition, talking about process, talking about the framework, and what are the proposals. We should see more implementation and action so that we can replicate or have lesson learned. So that's my question. I want to know what has been done, because it's an ongoing, we've been discussing blue economy, green economy, and we're still stuck with definition. So, I mean, with respect, we understand, because like I said, private sector, we need all those stakeholders to be available. Don't worry, for Nauru, we got a private sector, but I think he stepped out for a toilet. So we also invited a civil society representative in our delegation. I think my real question is, I don't know, probably I may be stupid like you. I haven't heard about the sea pocket area, the international water. It is one of the critical for all Pacific because of the illegal fishing boat. We keep on mentioning it, but nothing has been done. So I would like to ask India to champion this and probably give a few words on the international body to help us solve this sea pocket area, to help us maybe to transform it to maybe a protected area, so no fishing boat can be there, or probably cut that cake and share it, and maybe we can ask Kiribati to give some to Nauru, because how he is very, very small. So that's my contribution. You could ask India for that. Thank you.
A continuation of what he said. Most of this is like a theory that we have seen. Is there a role model or a best practice around the world, be it a nation or a province, where we can see these most of these followed?
Just keep an eye on my panel, please.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and the distinguished panelists. My name is Semisi. I'm from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Fiji. I have a couple of comments on the presentation by Mr. Borg, and unfortunately, the representative or the CEO for Environment of Samoa just stepped out. So I'll just try and keep it brief. For fisheries, you mentioned in your presentation, there are gaps, obviously. However, I would like to just point out that in Fiji, subsistence fishing and artisanal fishing is one of the main contributors. However, it's not reflected in our GDP. Studies and statistics have shown that it is twice as more than offshore fishing. So I guess my question here is, how can we work together to help address this shortfall? My second is on deep sea mining. I know this is a very contentious issue. I would not like to dive into the details, but rather just point out that the provisions under the International Seabed Authority is clearly stipulated. I guess as of now, we are still in an exploration phase. We have yet to move into the exploitation phase. And as of last year, the ISA expanded to another 5 more years the exploration period under Article 154 of ISA. And maybe just also commenting that for seabed mining, we can control what happens in areas beyond national jurisdiction. However, for seabed mining within national EEZs, it's totally up to the national sovereignty and rights whether they do conduct it or not. Moving on to the presentation by the Samoa delegate on capacity building. I guess capacity building is a huge issue for all of us here in the Pacific. However, and also I would like to acknowledge that we've been offered a lot of capacity building also from your good government. However, the capacity building issue that I would like to raise is one that needs to be reflective of our needs, one that is tailor-made for what we want. I guess data information sharing is a huge gap that we have. There's clearly a need for a clearinghouse mechanism and also a institutional arrangement where all that data can be housed under. And maybe also to point out that we also would like not only individual capacity, but institutional capacities as well to be provided, just to keep the bar balanced between developing and developed countries. And maybe just my last comment on the CLCS mentioned by Samoa. As I guess a lot of the Pacific Island countries in the room do acknowledge and do note as well that the Pacific, out of all the regions in the world, we are, I can say, 80 to 85% almost completed our national jurisdictions, the borders. So I guess the Pacific is a bit more advanced in that case. Yes, thank you. Just with those few words and comments and a question, that is all for me. Thank you.
I think the question on the gaps and inclusion of artisanal fisheries and subsistence fisheries, I believe it is the integrated approach that we should take, integrated management approach, a holistic approach. I have seen that the ministries work in isolation. The Ministry of Fisheries have their own mandate. The Ministry of Maritime and Shipping has their own mandate, and they should be speaking to each other. And through this, we can actually achieve, we can have all the data available, and we can have a better management system in place.
Mark, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think on artisanal fishing, Arpana already responded, but I think the problem here is where the tax revenue is coming from. That's where the most focus is given. And since artisanal fishing doesn't give us the tax revenue as the commercial fisheries does, then it's ignored. But we need to find a different formula on how much importance we give to the different sectors in this country. One of them is how much protein do they provide to our people. Commercial fishing is providing much less proteins to our people than artisanal fishing. So can we focus on that a bit, you know? On the blue revolution, and I see Andrew going out now, I think the revolution should not be one that revolutions usually upturn everything. Okay? I don't think it's anyone's intention to turn everything on its head. I think we need to study what's been achieved in the past, correct the mistakes that we've done, try to reverse some of the trends, and also cautiously and very cautiously explore the emerging industries and actions that are coming, you know, but an emphasis on the cautious.
There were no specific questions, but they have already told what sets the context. I just want to say that blue revolution is not a revolution, as he said, but we can start thinking about that. You know, the practice, as the gentleman there, they mentioned that nothing has happened. Actually, something has happened somewhere, but there is no knowledge. I have reserved my presentation for tomorrow's session on data methodology and other things. I will be speaking on those issues, where we exactly struggle. Otherwise, the rest depend on how do manage your resources? How do you discipline those who do not follow the set principles like regional fishery management organizations? I asked the chairman of Indian Ocean Rim Association, Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, that what do you do about migratory species? He said, I do not know. Because the migratory species migrate from one country to other country, no man's property. How do you regulate those resources? So there are certain things like that.
Will provide an answer.
Yeah. This is more than a smart city. See, we have named something as blue economy very recently. Recently. Otherwise, water, ocean, and all its territories were there for human development. Fiji itself was, when it was sort of brought into the world map, it was not the aeroplanes, it is through water. Its development, its various aspects of it were growing. Just because we came by airplane today doesn't mean that water did not exist. So we have named it something as blue economy. It somehow has caught everyone's fancy, so much so that I also wrote a book on blue economy. But anything to do with water resources has been there. So people need not feel that, oh, this is new, what is happening? Nothing is new. That's why I just said even about India. India is a 10,000-year-old country. Maybe it got liberated 65 years back. That doesn't mean that we didn't exist before. So I wear a new dress today. Doesn't mean that yesterday I didn't exist. Yesterday I did exist. So anything to do with water, anything to do with whatever we are calling as blue economy, in today's case we are only streamlining it and we are all contributing. But something was growing independent of us. We are a small dot in the whole ocean, every one of us. So now coming to a smart city, the smart city is again assimilation of many things. It is not that things didn't exist. People were having civilizations ages ago, but they were having civilizations within the purview of what was technology available. Today there is need for many of us to change because technology is available, the expectations are very high, people's aspirations are high, and so that has to be satisfied. And because of that, when we are imposing this blue economy, imposing this technology, smart city on blue economy, it is going to make life good, but like everyone has been saying, it has to be done planned way, it has to be simulated many things which are not there, but nothing is there to fear. Many times there's a fear something will happen. If I do deep sea mining, will I destroy the whole? We just don't exist for nature. If some outside the world Earth person comes to the world, they will see whether any human being around, because we don't even constitute 2% of the world's area. So all of us, including me, I'm not telling this as me to you all, have to be assured that there is somebody thinking and doing a good job, and we are all there to give the inputs and reap the benefit. Thank you.
Alfred, do you want to add something?
Sorry, so just to reiterate the fact that a sustainable blue economy is not something that is new, and there are already good initiatives that are already been implemented on the ground by various development partners here in the Pacific, including Fiji. And the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development actually provides a new business plan for the world, which brings into equal playing field the economic, environment, and social aspects of development. And if we feel that the private sector is not really achieving a sustainable development or green initiatives, then I think it's an opportunity for us to actually partner with the private sector to actually ensure that this actually happens. Based on the initiatives that are already happening on the ground that are being implemented, there are some success stories and there are some failures that we can actually learn from and build from that. And I think, and at the same time, we have to consider that in order for us to be able to move towards a sustainable blue economy, there are certain small steps that we need to take first. We cannot just take a big leap and achieve that. And we need to be able to set ourselves milestones and targets. And I know that there are lots of case studies from around the world that I'm happy to share at the end of this session, because we don't have much time. But from those case studies that I've known, they have been working on towards a sustainable blue economy using a regional approach because it involves many countries working together, and that they have some small achievements, but at the same time they already have some small failures that they need to learn from and continue to work towards. So it's not something that we are continuously talking without being implementing. There are already great initiatives that are happening on the ground, including here in the Pacific. Thank you.
If there are no comments from the floor, we'll try to conclude. There is? Yeah, last.
Mr. Moderator, I'm sorry if I've taken too much time, but I would like to put on the floor a very quick and direct questions. Firstly, thank you for a smooth moderation of the afternoon session, and thanks to all the panelists for a very enlightening educational trip for me. My name is Wilson from the FSM Empresa here in Suva. I'm somewhat touched by the earlier presentation that I know it wasn't a new thing to me that we have more water than land. I recall the grade school years when we were taught very clearly we're very tiny compared to the waters we have. I think I heard from Dr. Dash that one of the points on his slide was deep sea mining. It wasn't too clear to me whether you are advocating that route or you're somewhat reluctant. It's not clear to me, and that's my pretty much the question I have. But before I yield back to the moderator, I would like to know that my country is pretty much seriously thinking about that approach, and we're very divided. Of course, the conservative take the forefront and said that's a very bad idea. Don't ever get there. Being a small country, we need to harness our water and get the best out of it, and you can see the conflict between the two. So my question to you now is, or any of the panelists, is this something that, in your perspective, or the country's perspective, that you advocate or not? Thank you.
Let me thank everyone, the members of the panel, everyone who was here, took very active participation in the discussion. Listening to everyone, as I said right in the beginning, I am not an expert, but I try to talk, presuming that I have some common sense. I have seen the oceans, I have seen the seas, I have seen how they impact the human life both positively and in a negative manner. And also understanding that it's a huge thing. You know, we sometimes forget it is 70% of the Earth's surface. And that surface which we don't even fully understand, right? So obviously it's a complex issue. It's a very complex issue. Whatever color you use to the discussion, let it be green, blue, brown, whatever, as long as it adds to the human consciousness about sustainability, I think it's a step forward. Sometimes you have to use those cliches for changing, for shaking your mind. Just to tell something is happening, be careful. And if color helps in that understanding, I'm sure it's not a bad idea, right? I personally feel, because I am not only a diplomat, but I'm basically an environmentalist as my education. For me, in fact, green, blue, whatever you call it, but it's the capacity to regenerate. Can the ocean resources or the terrestrial resources, can the nature regenerate itself? Which means, can we work within its regenerational limits? Because once you cross it, then you cause the damage, right? It's like hitting me. For example, if you keep hitting me a little bit here and there, I'll recover. But if you hit me too hard, I may not be able to recover. So I think we need to understand there has to be an organic relationship with the environment. We should not really say that, oh, this is something to exploit, take advantage, and take as much as you can. So if you have that organic relationship with the environment, you have to live with the environment, not necessarily against the environment. I think there was a time when we thought taming the environment was a great idea, right? We thought, let's tame it. This thing comes in our way. We want to do something and suddenly there is a storm, there is a rain, there is a something else. So they come in the way. Can we tame the nature or overpower them? Let there be a storm, but still we'll be able to go through. Now, that attitude of overpowering the nature, vis-a-vis living with the nature, I think the color, whatever you give it, I think as long as it adds to our understanding that we need to respect the nature and work within its own limits of regeneration and recovery. You give it whatever color you want to give. I think that's a positive step. Because you said nothing has happened, but believe me, I'm much older than you. Each time I go to the port, I see the ships are better. They're less polluting. They are less discharging into the waters. Controls are better. I think whatever we do to improve those things, it's a good idea. And most of the impact, other than overfishing and things like that, most of the impact on the ocean is the result of terrestrial activity. We have not gone into the ocean to pollute it. The activity was on the earth, on the land, and we landed up impacting the ocean. So I think we need to have a holistic approach to sustainability. We have to mend our ways on land, and we have to mend our ways in the waters. So that's the approach we need to. And when it comes to the blue economy, in my view, I think whatever knowledge we think we have extensive knowledge about oceans. In my view, we have not even scratched the surface. We need to generate knowledge about oceans. I think land-based systems we slightly better understand, but the ocean systems we don't understand. We need to generate good knowledge. Once you have good knowledge, translate those into good skills of dealing with ocean. Based on your knowledge and skills, you need to improve regulation. Then technology induction. Let's put technology to use for minimizing impact of what we do. As I said, for example, when I was going to college, and once somebody said, "Have you seen a computer?" I'm going further down, right? I'm not going to my laptop. I said, "No, I have not seen a computer." He said, "Let me show you." He took me to a building, it's called computer building. And the computer was on 3 floors. Can you imagine? It was a computer building. And computer was on 3 floors, and its capacity was something about 486. Right? Same thing, everything. Refrigerator, I know my refrigerator used to weigh about 150 kilos. Today it weighs about 60 kilos. So we are trying to reduce the intake for the same output. So the efficiency of input-output has improved immensely. Right? We are all talking about paperless offices. Now, it's going to have a good impact on environment. So my issue is that we shouldn't have a knee-jerk reaction to this. A lot has been done, a lot has to be done. Let's do it better. Because, as I said, can you go and tell your people, for God's sake, tomorrow onwards you will not go to the sea? He'll say, for God's sake, I've lived on this sea for 300 years, 400 years, 500 years, for 10,000 years. I live on these waters, how can you tell me not to go there? So I think shutting down the whole thing is not a good idea. But improving your interaction with the elements is a wonderful idea. Make sure whatever you do, you see what impact it's going to have on the elements. Either you will understand or you will not understand, right? If you don't understand, be careful. If you understand, either it could be negative or it could be positive or neutral. If it's negative, don't do it. You know, at the end of the day, these are simple things, but we don't do simple things. You give somebody an option between a simple answer and a complex answer, they will pick the complex answer. Right? So, I personally feel there are best practices. They are being done in small scale. There are very bad practices also being done. Let's understand both good and bad practices. And our effort should be to eliminate the bad practices and promote the good practices. I'm sure a day will come when we would be better off than what we are now. And my hope is on technology. Now, I talk simplistic language sometimes. Our capacity to harm the environment was also the result of technology. Right? I could do only this much without technology. And I could only harm that much without technology. Technology increased my capacity of action several-fold, and that would have impacted. And I'm sure technology is going to help us now to rectify that approach and those consequences. So with these words, I think, and when it comes to, for example, India, we, as I said, FICCI is going to organize first a national conclave, then an international meeting on developing a matrix of knowledge, basically. Knowledge and needs. We'll develop a comprehensive matrix of knowledge and needs. I would, on behalf of FICCI, invite you, if you have interest, it will be done sometime next year, please come and share your views. Share your capacities, share your needs with others, and see what the others have. And try to see those best practices. I think there is no better alternative to talking, exchanging information, learning from each other, doing the good things, and not doing the bad ones. With these words, I will take your permission to close the session, and I have a small announcement to make. There is a reception and dinner. I'm sure that's definitely a good news. And it's quite blue. Right? With this, we'll end the session. Thank you very much.